Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
It is time now to check in with our friends from Lutheran Heritage Foundation. Joining us by phone today, the Reverend Dr. Matthew Heise, Executive Director for Lutheran Heritage Foundation. Pastor Heise, thanks for being our guest today on the Coffee Hour.
Good morning, Andy and Sarah from up north.
Are you staying safe where you are right now?
We are all working remotely now.
Very good, very good.
And travel obviously has been pretty much curtailed.
Yeah.
But the work goes on.
So you're safe in Michigan, is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, give us some of the latest updates from Lutheran Heritage Foundation and the recent work. What happened prior to the pandemic, and then also what's taking place today as well.
Well, I can tell you that, actually some work is going on. I'm in contact with a lot of our people around the world, and as you can imagine, most of them are shut down right now. But on our homepage, our lhfmissions.org page, we have we had them actually tape some messages of comfort and sharing how important it is to have a book at this time. Because as people are sequestered and probably walking up the walls, especially in some of these societies where they don't have the perhaps all the gadgets that we do in America, it's really important to have a book. So this becomes really important, and we emphasize once again how important it is that people have the word or explanations of the word in their own language. So some places are still going on, and I'll share with you a little bit about that right now, because actually Indonesia is still working to some extent. Our own Ted Natalong, who is our director for Southeast Asia, had been there actually in February, and he told me, he says, I've never seen the airports so empty. As he was returning too, because he just recognized that when the Chinese aren't traveling, there just really isn't. There aren't a whole lot of people in the airport. So, nonetheless, work in Indonesia continues.
Mm-hmm. What now? These books in Indonesia. What language is that? Do you know?
Yeah, it's ironic, Sarah. Bahasa is literally the word for language in Indonesia. So you could call it Indonesian, but a lot of times we just end up using the word Bahasa. And Bahasa as language is the language that mostly is used, although we've been exploring some of the other languages, and primarily the Batak people. So there's really, I put my historian's hat on because I got graduate degrees from Wayne State University in Detroit in history, and so I'm always kind of trying to look at things from a historical perspective. And it's really ironic when you think almost 200 years ago, I mean, what was Indonesia like? There were actually 2 American Baptist missionaries who were killed and eaten, literally, by the Batak people, who were cannibals at that time. And shortly after their martyrdom, 30, 40 years, there was a Ludwig Nommensen, who was a German Lutheran missionary from the Rhenish Mission Society, Rhenish coming from Rhineland. And he went there and basically had this vision to spread the word of God in this land. And so one of the really ironic things is I'm thinking, we just put out a Child's Garden of Bible Stories in Batak, and we just got copies of it recently. It was completed November 2019. Nommensen did a basic children's Bible story book in 1882. So, here you're going almost well over 100, almost 140 years, and now once again we're getting books in that language, and people are really excited to get this.
Yeah, thanks be to God for that work and for your ability to keep bringing those books to children in Indonesia. What else is happening in the Southeast Asian region? What else is going on with translation there?
Well, right now we just have a whole large number of books in Bahasa, and now Batak we're just starting with because a lot of Batak too, the language is in the Borneo seminary. Now those were Lutheran back in Nomenson's time, but they've kind of since of course Germans, their own state church became more what you call evangelical, a mix of Reformed and Lutheran. They're fairly large, these seminaries, and they're looking for books. So right now we are just about completing and getting ready to go to print with a first portion of the Book of Concord in Bahasa, because we've had this demand from seminary students, actually, and the Borneo Seminary. This is kind of an interesting thing. When I ask people, when I go to churches, I ask them, what are the largest Lutheran countries in the world? And, they're always surprised to see, okay, there's a couple of African countries, Tanzania and Ethiopia, that are rising in the numbers, and then you have the old Germany, Sweden, but the fifth largest country is Indonesia, and that's 5.5 million. But they've kind of lost some of that Lutheran distinctiveness, and so they're really kind of interested in restoring that. And we're kind of working through some people we know in Lutheran Church of Australia who have inroads there. And so we're doing some of that translation. We did just this past year also Lutheranism 101 for kids. And so it's kind of neat to see the picture there. You got Indonesian-looking kids with a baseball cap on backwards. And, but, once again, kind of getting an understanding of Christianity from a Lutheran perspective. And that's some of the things that we were really thrilled to be able to do because, Indonesia itself is the largest Muslim country in the world, 229 million Muslims. And while it's the fifth largest Lutheran country, 5.5 million, I mean, that's a drop in the bucket compared to 229 million when you think of those numbers. So we really have some open doors. It's just, right now, it's incredible the opportunities we have. In particular right now, Indonesia, although it's the largest Muslim country in the world, it has this at least this acceptance of diversity within the public schools, meaning that they actually teach religion. Now, naturally, most of that's Islam, but they open it up to Christians. Christians are able to teach the Christian faith in state schools in Indonesia. And so the Christians there who teach are always short of books, and they're, gee, what can you do for us? And so, I mean, what we provide is probably a drop in the bucket, but it is a start with what we can do, and to have these opportunities, not only to go into schools and have Christians teach, but it's a predominantly Muslim population. So you have Muslim kids who are reading Luther's Catechism, and they love the fact that we have workbook in Bahasa. So, teachers always love, okay, how do we keep the kids occupied and focused on a lesson? Well, we have the workbook that we've translated, the catechism itself. So to me, the irony is sometimes where, unfortunately, in the Western world, we've kind of thought, we've kind of ignored this treasure, Martin Luther's Small Catechism that explains the faith. Here we have Muslim kids learning the catechism in Indonesia.
We have just about, about 3.5 minutes left. What other stories can
long already?
What other stories can you share with us today? I know that that LHF is doing work in other countries as well. Do you have enough? Can you share with us? Is 2 or 3 minutes enough time to share another story with us today?
Well, I can maybe just go up a little bit there, because Southeast Asia is really a hotbed for activity in the Christian faith, and so we have more and more work being done in Cambodia as we speak. And we found a really, really good representative, Reverend Sopa Korn. Sopa has an interesting background because he was, and I always tell people this is kind of how people come to the faith. He was Buddhist, naturally, as most Cambodians were. But because of the lack of funds, he had to live in a dorm, and he lived near Christian students, and he saw their behavior. He became more intrigued by Christianity. He began to read, and he became a believer. Here's the first step. Great. He becomes a believer because Christians actually witness to the faith. And so Sopa became a believer, but he had become part of an evangelical church that really focused on works righteousness. And he said, I felt the burden. I felt the burden of always trying to fulfill the law, and I couldn't quite do it. And that's when he got into contact with some Lutherans and began to read about, I am a sinner. I'm going to fall again. I'm going to fall every day. And yet, by my baptism, I know that God has put his mark on me, and I am redeemed by Christ. And I live this battle of the faith that Paul talks about in Romans 7, up and down, the Luther's notion of the old man and the new man throwing each other on the wrestling mat. It's that understanding that this is going to happen, and it gives me a type of peace to know that Christ has done all for me, and that I'm going to fall, but I can get back up every single day because God has redeemed me through Christ. And so Sopa is just a great representative to a lot of the Cambodians for us in explaining the faith. And he's been very active in spreading the word throughout the country. I've been on trips with him going throughout the country and just kind of seeing everywhere you go, you just see these Buddha statues at every roundabout as you enter a new town or city, and realizing, the great work that is needed, and yet the desire that is there in places like Indonesia, in places like Cambodia, in places like Thailand, in places like Malaysia. So the work is going on, even while we're sequestered. We continue to speak to people. We have a match program. We have a donor who matches people's gifts. So, for example, this Batak children's Bible storybook, it basically cost about $4.50 to produce each book. And that donor will match one-to-one each donation. So if somebody gave $25, for example, for about 5 books, that becomes 10 books because the donor will match 5 more. And so we get these opportunities throughout the year to double people's gifts, and we just tell them, we're focused right now in coronavirus on that first death, but there is that second death, the eternal death and separation from Christ. And so we need to think about this again, and I hear the music going, so I better slow down.
Check out lhfmissions.org. Thank you so much, Dr. Heise.
The Coffee Hour
Thanks,
with
Andy and Sarah.
is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.